Hi, I'm Catherine Engelhardt Kronk, and I'm the founder and CEO of Community Technology, or CTK. CTK provides software to over 8,000 nonprofits in the United States, Canada, and the European Union. I also have a long history of work with nonprofits, having been several times executive director of nonprofit service provision organizations and vice president of United Way. Today, I'm particularly excited because I'm introducing a friend and colleague, Gary Godsey. Gary and I know each other well, worked together in the past. Gary has an impressive background, and he has agreed to spend some time with me over the next couple days talking about transforming nonprofit organizations for the 21st century. Gary has over 30 years experience both as an executive director of American Cancer Society in Tennessee and acting as CEO of 4 different United Ways. And really more than being a CEO, Gary acted as a transformational agent at those United Ways. And that's why I'm excited about him coming today and talking to us, because this is, I think, what nonprofits are hungry to learn about. And I know that your work, not only directly in United Ways and in nonprofits, but your work on some of the advisory boards through United Way Worldwide empowered you to work directly with thousands of nonprofits. So I'm hoping today you're going to share your understanding and your experience with us in how executives and staff at nonprofits can look to transform their organizations for the 21st century.
Fantastic. It's good working with you again.
It's really good.
I had a chance to think about our work together in Austin when we started in the mid-90s, and the situation with that organization that we inherited and how we really transformed that organization.
Indeed.
And thought about some general messages that might be important for people to hear. So I'll be talking about that a little bit.
Great, that's what we want to hear.
Also, was thinking about, wouldn't it have been nice to have something like this that anyone could go look at and at least try to garner some pieces of information from it?
Yes.
Maybe not the whole thing, maybe not taking on a total transformation project, but if you could learn 1 or 2 things based on someone's experience, what a great idea it was. So I want to thank you for making this happen and giving me an opportunity basically to talk about some of the things I've observed, some of the things I've been involved in, some of the things that have been successful, and at the same time, maybe look at things that we could have done better.
Sure.
So that people can get a sense of what they might do if they're in a similar situation.
Well, I think it's going to be helpful because, as I said, we work with over 8,000 nonprofits, and we are in their offices at least several times in the course of our work with them, and the same questions come up over and over. And you know, it's not about software.
Right.
Software is a tool,
Sure.
but you have to know what to do with it.
Right.
And that's why I'm excited that we're doing this, because it will provide information for nonprofits that can help them better and more strategically position themselves to use whatever resources they have, including software, but whatever tools, to move forward.
Well, that's the whole idea of trying to transform an organization. It's first understanding, what is it? What do we do? What do we stand for? What's our position in the community? How do people view us?
There's the part I think that's interesting, because executive directors will tell you, they have the elevator speech about their mission.
Oh, sure. Important.
But I think when I was an executive director anyway, you know, you're so busy keeping the doors open and the lights on and the staff paid that you sort of have this head down approach. And I think you miss, how are we perceived in the community? You know, what is our position?
Well, think about it for a minute. Here's what's happening. There are now 1.3 million 501c3s in America. That's just 501c3s. There are a lot of other charitable endeavors that kind of circle the outside of that 501c3 universe. And within any given community, there are loads of competition for every charity. And to step back and find the time to figure out where you fit into that overall scheme of things in your own community, it's step one. You've got to find a baseline of information And by the way, it doesn't cost a whole lot of money to do that. I think most nonprofits begin to think about, well, it's going to cost me a ton of money to do that. No, they have volunteers. They've got, I'm sure some of them have staff that they can lean on. But there's a lot of resources that we can potentially talk about in the community that can help you take step one, which is to determine how you're viewed in the community, and then begin a process of planning about whether you want to change that. Do you want to move that in a different direction? Do you need to shore up things with your organization? Do you need to change things, fundamentally change things with your organization? And most importantly, where do you want to go organizationally in the future, and determine how you're going to get there?
So what you're saying then is, number one, do it internally or go to a local nonprofit management organization that's there to help you for free, or look towards perhaps volunteers that do that professionally, and sit down and really talk about what is our position in this community. How do people look at this, at us? Would they do that through surveys? Would you?
Well, the first thing to do is to, as the CEO, the executive director, whatever the title is, you've got to make a commitment that you want to get that done. Mm-hmm. And then as the CEO of the organization, you drive out a plan on this, a process and a plan for getting it done. If you're sitting around waiting on someone to come up and say, I want to help you with this, it's probably not going to happen. If you, first thing, admit that I need to do this organizationally in order to begin a transformational journey, you have to know where you're starting from.
Right.
And
so you want to get a baseline.
That's an executive job to do that. And if you're running it, pushing it off to somebody else, if you're telling someone else, oh, you go handle that, I don't really want to do that, initially it's the executive's job to articulate that to their board, that I'm really interested in finding out about where we are organizationally. Now, once they get a buy-in on that, there's a lot of resources that are out there, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
A lot of pro bono resources, things that won't cost you any money to go and implement into your program. Universities are fantastic for that purpose. Getting MBA students or programs to survey, to talk to your customers, to talk to clients, to talk to donors, and come up with a strategy on how they can really give you a snapshot, more than a snapshot, a comprehensive picture of your organization and the community. I've been through 3 or 4 of those. They're not always pretty.
Mm-hmm. I'll bet.
But you got to be willing to accept the information,
the truth,
and then be willing to go from there.
That's
And
interesting.
that's kind of step one on the journey.
And I think that that's very good advice, because a lot of executive directors or presidents, or whatever they call themselves, look at that kind of activity as what corporations do, businesses do, but nonprofits don't need to do that. But of course they do.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Sure.
So I can't tell you over the 32 years that I've been doing this, the number of people that have said to me, oh, you do that full time? Questions. You mean we thought that a nonprofit, didn't need an executive director or didn't need a CEO, and you actually do that full time. Well, a good nonprofit, in my estimation, runs itself as any good business would. Large, medium, or small, it doesn't matter. It's a scale difference. That's the only difference. In any good nonprofit, you're going to be practicing the same business practices that any company in America would practice. Generally, your problem area will be that you don't have the same amount of resources, which goes back to what we were talking about, having to probably seek out ways that people can help you get the work done. But there is a misperception out there, I think, and it's a big one, that if you run a nonprofit, you may not be as good as somebody running a for-profit company. And I can tell you, after 32 years and a lot of colleagues, I'd put many of the nonprofit executives I know in any boardroom, in any CEO seat in America, in some companies, and they would thrive because they know the general principles of running the business.
Well, I found that to be true for myself, because I spent 20 years in nonprofits in an executive positions, and then started this for-profit company with shareholders, and 90% of it is the same.
It
There are
is.
some few differences, but easy to learn, because when you're an executive director or a CEO of a nonprofit, you have to be a generalist.
You do,
And you have to have your hands in all things.
And I bet you really found ways to maximize the way you found resources.
Well, I think that's why my company, a software company, a technology company, has lived and survived and thrived and grown through the tech bubble burst and through the recent recession, because I learned a long time ago running nonprofits how to make a penny go a long way, how to utilize resources effectively, and encourage and support and create a mission-driven environment for my staff, which is what you have to do when you run a nonprofit.
Absolutely. It's key.
So
it's key.
I hear you.
And I think as we talk about different topics, perhaps over this series, there'll be some central things that will never go away on any topic we're talking about. One's a clear focus on your mission.
Mm-hmm.
Two's having the alignment of resources to get the mission done. Three is having a clear and compelling story to tell in the community, and being able to do that in a way where people can consume it at every level of the community. For years, I always had a 2 to 3 minute speech in my pocket. Mm-hmm. And no matter where I went, I would modify it a little bit, determined by the audience I was speaking to. One time I stood up in the back of a UPS truck and gave a speech to all the drivers, 150 of them. The central message was still the same, and that afternoon I was talking to 120 CEOs in a much more formal setting, but the message was the same. I tweaked the delivery a little bit, but my core message was still the same. And I think that's very, very important for nonprofit executives and staff.
Meaning the core message was all about your mission and your position in the community and
what we stand
telling
for,
your story.
Telling the story, being able to do it in a succinct fashion. I'm a big believer in 10 minutes is plenty. If you are the executive of a nonprofit and you're an established executive and you can't stand up in front of 2 people or 2,000 people and in 10 minutes make a compelling case for your organization, you better be working on that.
Okay.
15 minutes is stretching the limits, and 20, you've lost people. Don't you hate to see people who stand up and read a speech?
Yes.
Don't you hate to see people, particularly corporate executives, looking down at a piece of paper instead of standing up and telling them why their company does what it does, why they should support their company? Well, the nonprofit world should operate, I believe, in the same manner. 15 minutes, a speech that really nails why you exist, what you do, what's your mission, how can people help you with that, how can you become involved, and what's next for your organization.
What I'd like to do in this series, Gary, is take that exact list and prescription and have you delve a little bit more deeply into each of those topics for the viewers that we have.
Okay.
The nonprofits. Are you? So
I'm ready.
We're ready. Okay.
It's my opinion, but I'm ready.
Your opinion's valuable and important. That's why you're here. You're a man with a lot of experience. It's great to listen to what you have to say.